So I'm just going to go over a few things that I demonstrated in class in the second week. First one will be a trace bitmap. So I've got a blank canvas here and I have a picture here that I'm going to just copy from the internet, and I'm going to paste it into this document. I'm going to trace it and convert it into, in Illustrator, I'm going to convert it into a vector. So as it stands, it's a bitmap JPEG image. So every single pixel within this shape, this rectangle, is accounted for in some way. And once we convert it into a traced vector image, then all we'll have left will be the text and the arm here. So with this pasted in and it's selected, so you can see it's selected, I've got the selection tool and you can see it's got this blue box around the outside of it. If I just press the image trace button up here, notice that it will disappear if you've not got your image selected. So you need to have that selected, press image trace, and it will just give you a rough trace that it thinks is appropriate for this particular thing. So what we want to do now is go up here to this image trace panel. We can get hold of that out of here as well, image trace, and play about with the settings in here. So just the basic settings here, we've got this set to black and white. We can change that to colour and it'll have a think about it, and then it'll give us a colour version. So you can see what's going on here. It's trying to understand the pixel information inside the JPEG that we've pasted in, and it's smoothing it all out and converting it into vectors. It's converting it into points, shapes, and filling those shapes in with colour. So that might not be what we want. There's a bunch of presets up here as well, so we could try 3 colours and see what that gives us. So that's a colour version of what we just had. And thinking back to the original image, we pretty much would think that that could be quite a good trace of this particular image. We know that there's a sort of a white, or it's an off-white, red for the text, and black arm. You've got some more options here, so you can turn up or down the number of colours inside this, and every time you move it, it'll think about things again. There we go. So that's doing that. So it's added that noise back into that image. We'll just put that back down to 3. And if we click on Advanced, then you've got various different ways of editing how it's looking at this. So you can have a lower amount of paths. It's going to make it a bit more angular or higher. It's going to try and trace as much as it can within the original image. More corners or less corners. It's not really making much difference. And we can add some noise just to try and see if that's going to smooth things out for us. Take that away. The main thing that I would use here would be the ignore white option, and that's going to get rid of the white background. And really, if we only want the arm, which is all I want for what I'm doing here, I'll go and change that back to black and white. And you can see, if we just zoom in and have a look over here, you can tell that it's ignoring the white background, and it's just put the it's made it just one colour, put that on the background. So let's just go back out of that. So all I wanted was this arm, really. So I'm happy now. I'm going to press expand, and now that's given me a proper trace of all of these things here. And so using the direct selection tool, I can go in and I can edit things. So if I don't want any of this text, for instance, I can select it all and press delete. Same here. Just going to select over it, press opacity and all of that's gone. And now I can select the arm itself, and I could go and change the colour of it if I want to. Might be able to add a stroke onto it. And there's other bits and pieces that you can do with it selected as well. Some of this might not work with this particular image, but if you go up into Object and Path, then you could play about with simplifying it and seeing if that does anything. If we switch Preview on, here we go. So that's playing around with the curves that are in there. So it might be just an extra little thing just to go and check and see how it works out with an image that you've made. And then having straight lines here is really chopping it around. So if you've got a drawing that you've done yourself and you want to import a scan or a photograph of that into Illustrator and trace that, this is a really good way of converting your image into a vector, which you can then scale up and down however much you want. So let me just show you that last thing about that scaling here. So if I zoom in on this line here, I want to be able to see the percent. So you can see down at the bottom here, I've clicked zoom a couple of times and we've got 400% going here. So if we zoom a few more times, we've got 1200%. Keep on zooming, and you can see how sharp this line is at 6,400%. So if we were to do the same thing with the original image, and if I paste that in again here, you can see we get to 400% and it's quite blocky, and you can start to see the JPEG artifacts inside this image. Now we're at 800%, and we keep going, 2,400%, 3,200, press the wrong button, 4,800, and this is as much as you can zoom in, and so it's just all blocky. If we were to try and do that sort of thing in Photoshop, this would, let's just make a new document, paste, press the wrong button again, paste that in. So this gives you the same idea. As we zoom in, you get in all the pixels. That's as far as it'll let us zoom in on that. If we go and change the image size here, so we want to resample it and we want it to be bigger. So let's just change this to centimeters. This is about the size of a square as an A4 piece of paper. So if we wanted this really big, like a meter square, for instance, you can see there's this strange sort of effect that starts to happen here. It doesn't look exactly the same as what we've got here. And so if we apply this, what it's going to do is it's going to resample the image. There's various different options for how it will it has to make new pixels because you're trying to spread this image out over a much bigger area, and so it's going to resample, and it's going to use one of these that it thinks is right. So you can use enlargements or reductions, smooth gradients, hard edges, whichever. It's going to have a look at it and it's going to try and think this is the right way of doing it. And so it's still looking a bit weird and pixely and rough. You get those JPEG artifacts in there, but you can zoom into it a lot more, but it's not going to make it any better. So really, what I'm saying with this is if you are working on some kind of flat colour graphic like this, the best way of doing it really is to use Illustrator and to draw it out from scratch yourself, make the text, and then you'll be able to resize it from, you could start off with something that's a couple of centimetres square, and you can enlarge that to pretty big proportions, as big as this will go, because the vectors are just points and lines joining these points together and then fills within those shapes.